So, Stephen Simon over on YouTube asked the question, how do you keep up with the new versions of Angular? It seems like they come like every 6 months, and I'm always like two versions or a year behind.
That's a great question. It's a shared problem, and the way I've gotten around it is by really kind of like looking for the LTS or the long-term support releases. There's a numeric numbering system that you'll see when a version of pretty much any software is usually released. It's going to be something. It's usually have three numbers in there, like let's say 9.1.2 or something like that, and those numbers represent what are called major, minor, and incremental changes. So what you'll see is when you go from like a 9 to a 10 or 6 to a 7, that's a huge release, meaning that there may be some API changes, some syntax changes, some things that really are going to be difference between that and the former SDK or the former way it worked. And then you'll see sometimes that maybe they'll go from 9.1 to 9.2. And what that really just means is just a couple minor changes and tweaks, maybe nothing major, nothing breaking. And then incremental, you usually don't see those as much just because those usually stay in like the beta or the alpha channels, meaning that those are features that are bleeding edge. So if you really want to be on that next build, you can get on that. But for me, what I've tried to do is really just try to like bucket my development to the major and then occasionally the minor releases as well. So for me right now, that's running on Angular 9, but I kind of like take this same approach to just about anything, because what you'll see, for example, is we even do the same thing here at Microsoft with .NET Core. If you remember, not too long ago, 2.1 was all the rage, and now we're on 3, and I think we're even on 5 now. So I say that to say
With
that
six coming shortly.
yeah, and 6 right up the coming around the corner. So yeah, it's a problem that is a good problem, because it means that there's improvements. There's usually going to be security enhancements, speed, all of those things. But it can be problematic as a developer as you're trying to like juggle. Well, especially when the documentation doesn't match just because the version changed. But it's a problem that I have as well.
Okay, that's a great answer. I appreciate that. And right along those lines, and there's like now a queue of questions, so I'm going
I love
slightly out of
this.
order,
Look, we
but
could talk
keeping it
about this.
together.
This
Yeah,
means you're going to have me come back. So
absolutely. No, I love having you on. You're fantastic, and I love it for exactly this reason, that I can just throw out a question and then you just go on. It's wonderful. But Stephen asked the question: someone willing to learn Angular now, where should they start? Angular JS, Angular 2, or latest 12?
definitely probably the latest.
Okay.
Angular JS was the original version of Angular several years ago, meaning that you'll only really find that on a couple blogs that haven't been updated, and or maybe legacy code. So they're actually two different kind of approaches to doing Angular. So Angular JS is old Angular. What I've seen a lot of lately is Angular 9. A lot of the demos, a lot of the samples that I've been working with have been targeted at Angular 9. That being said, the latest and greatest, the documentation that's going to be most up to date, it's going to kind of be probably geared towards Angular 12. So
Okay.
if you were to go to the Angular.io or the Angular website right now, you probably would be started off at Angular 12. That being said, what's really nice is that once you kind of learn things at the high level, they tend to really kind of just improve upon or build upon what you know previously. So don't be surprised, for example, if Angular 9 and Angular 12 are just slightly different, or maybe there's a couple different syntax changes, but it's something that happens. And pick one that you can find the most documentation on or the most support with, and try to stick with it for as long as possible.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Let me actually follow up then with like my own personal question, which is for Angular, because I know that Angular is built on TypeScript, and the two are very closely tied together. Do you need to know TypeScript in order to do Angular?
Technically, no, because Angular will actually also work with JavaScript. And the thing about TypeScript, for those who aren't aware, is that TypeScript is just a superset of JavaScript, meaning that TypeScript is a meta language. It compiles into JavaScript. So the way you can kind of think about it is that I consider it kind of like a compound word, right? So you pretty much take two English words or two JavaScript, like functions or something, and you put them in a manner that follow certain rules and grammars. The only difference being that we have a type and a compilation system. So if you put a JavaScript, if you can actually like run a JavaScript function, and you won't know it's broken until you're actually running that function. Whereas with TypeScript, that same function won't even let you push it or get it onto the web, because it's going to say, hey, this doesn't follow those syntax and those rules. So you can actually use Angular with JavaScript, but the best practice or the recommendation is to definitely leverage it with TypeScript. And the thing with TypeScript is that it's a subset or superset of JavaScript.